Well, when I was still dating Susan, we were driving down to Birmingham on a conference, and it was a very long drive. It was about a 5-hour drive. And unfortunately, with John, it takes 6 hours because every time he spoke, he lifts his foot off the accelerator. And I was not walking with the Lord at the time. I'd been brought up as a Christian in a Christian background, but I'd left church probably in my mid-teens, 17, 18. And so God and Jesus wasn't a part of my life at that time for a long time, for 17 years, actually. And on the way down, John, being an evangelist, thought it was a good idea. I was captive in his car for the next 6 hours, and I got a lesson on baptism and why it was important. And I've got to say it worked. You know, I'm here today and baptized, and I'm very grateful for him. So I give John a lot of thanks for guiding me and nursing over that years. We have a great laugh. We have a great sense of humour together. So he doesn't get offended, and we give him a wee bit of slagging every now and then. So it's good to have Grandad here this morning. I don't know if it's me or the promise of some soup it brought him, to be honest. But he's here, and we're very grateful for that, along with Connor and Lauren and Rachel as well. So good morning, it's good to see you. And my throat's very dry from singing this morning. It was great. I think we need to give thanks to God. A round of applause for giving these gifts and talents. So thank you for the worship team for what they have done. And I actually think we can say thank you much louder than that. If we were at a cinema or a theatre, we would be much more appreciative. We're thanking God for the talents and people giving up their time Sunday after Sunday to come and lead in worship. So let's just give God thanks for everything that goes on here in the church before we arrive. We really do appreciate it. And to God goes the glory for all these things. So I'm going to just fulfill a prophecy here. I know I started off, I think the first thing I said to you when I met you 4 weeks ago was I'm going to say something prophetic. And one was that you'd understand me far easier come week 4. Has that been the case? Some of you, yeah. Thank you. Still nodding at the back there. Very kind of you. And some shaking their head as well. And the other one was I'd lose some weight. Well, I'm half a stone lighter. So there you go. Half a stone, not too bad. Someone said to me last week, how do you do it? I said, it's easy. Just tell 70 people that you're going to lose weight and you've got no choice because they're all going to be asking. And so you can't be seen as a failure. So you've got to keep focused and keep doing it. But over the last few weeks, we've been blessed I've been blessed to share with you guys what God's put in my heart about this journey between two people, David and Saul. We looked at a guy who was a shepherd, and we looked at a guy who was a king, an anointed king. And we'll just have some quick slides here in case this is your first week with us or just to catch up. But also, I want to try and reiterate that this is a series of lessons that God's put in my heart. One, looking at gifts, because we're looking at building a church. That's where we're coming from right now. So it starts with, what do we have in the house? That's where we always start. What has God given us in the house? What talents and gifts do we have here? And we start off with looking at the gifts. I think in our first slide we'll see here that we looked at gifts of it was a matter of the heart. We saw it was a matter of the eyes and a matter of the mind. And we spoke about how our hearts had to be, we understood that we were given through the church. And we spoke about in our eyes, we need to be looking for opportunities to serve. And finally, we spoke about our mind, how David always brought his A game when he played the harp. David was a great guy, but God chose to use maybe his least of all skills as a harpist, to bring him into God's service. And that was week 1. Week 2, we looked at roller coasters and Big Dippers, and I was able to get a chance to share with you my roller coaster face. I wasn't joking when I said it looked like that. That is it. That's my genuine roller coaster face. And certainly is how we can feel like that when we're in a roller coaster of life, both in church life and personally as well. We learned that it can be a spiritual battle, and if we're recognized that we're in a spiritual battle, then we're armed. We're forearmed. We know that nothing can harm us if we know we're in a spiritual battle. We're looking to protect ourselves through God. Secondly, we spoke about surrounding ourselves with a friend, how David had Jonathan, and the importance of having a friend in church. It doesn't have to be your best friend, and I always suggest, not always your wife or your husband if you're married, but often somebody a little bit older, a bit wiser, who's maybe got a little bit more experience of you, but somebody that you trust, that they can say, hey, you know what, you're wrong this time, I would apologize. It's always good to have that friend. And lastly, the most important lesson of that particular week was to not major on the season, but to focus on the King. And that's good when things are going well, that we don't get too full of ourselves and pat ourselves in the back, that we're doing it as service, and we've always got to be humble. I always tell the guys when I led the men's ministries for 8 years in Larbert, that service, being a leader in the men's ministry with us, doesn't mean you're out front preaching. It means you're in the kitchen making the teas and coffees for the guys coming in. That's service. That is leadership in every aspect of the thing. Not focusing on the season, but focusing on the King. And last week was the epic one. I apologise, I made you sit through an hour, but I couldn't. I cut out stuff, and I wanted to be faithful to what God had given me. But we looked at the subject of forgiveness, and we spoke about how that the first two and the last one doesn't really matter if we don't get week 3 right. We've got to learn to forgive. And it's something that personally I took on board, and so I hope it was blessed you. We learned that through unforgiveness, we take offence. We learned how it was a physical action that we've chosen to take offence. We've chosen to carry that offence, and through carrying that offence, that leads to bitterness. And we learned how through bitterness, really bitterness can spring up, and how bitterness is one of the characteristics that grieves the Holy Spirit, a very destructive characteristic. And that's really what we've looked at over the last 3 weeks. And today, we want to look at the subject of vision and leadership. And it's very easy to think about leadership being something that only applies to the leaders of the church. Our vision is only for the leaders of the church. When in actual fact, leadership and vision is something that you will see today that is a collective thing. Because it's okay to lead, but you need the people to be with you. One thing we've learned from David over the years, through this lesson, is that he led, but people was with him. They bought into the vision. So it's easy to not buy into the vision, but people bought into the vision. My hometown is a wee place called Gardenstown. I know some of you have mentioned it. This is it here. I'm blessed. We've got slides again this week. It's great to have some visuals. I can share with you a little bit about my village and where I come from. Very small fishing village. I grew up there as a child. It was great to go there. It's great if you've been on holiday. I know some of you have been there and you visited it. And I always say I'm from Gardenstown. And if you reply to me you're from Gamery, I know you know the area. It's the local name for the village. And it looks so beautiful and peaceful and tranquil. And that really, it can be like that. This harbour, I left school at the age of 15. I went aboard a fishing boat, a small boat from this harbour here for the first 6 months catching salmon. Very hard work, very labour-orientated work. And then I left to go aboard the trawlers, where I was there for 10 years. And very much, it doesn't always look like this. Sometimes it looks a bit like this. And this is actually my father coming into Peterhead Harbour one day, and we were standing down there watching them coming in. And that's a horrible experience to watch your dad out there on the boat. And I don't know how my mum felt when at one point she had my father and her 2 sons both in the fishing industry. And you may think, that's a horrible photograph. Wait to see the next one, because it's even worse when you're in the boat. That's far worse. And people often say to me, so Mike, why did you leave the fishing? I think you know why I left the fishing. I was fed up smelling like a haddock all the time, and that's very much what some of the fishing industry is like. And I did it for 10 years, and it was my life, it was in my blood. But I came to a point in my life where, I had a different vision for my life. I decided I wanted something different. I was a fisherman, all intents and purposes. Aboard a trawler, I'm very highly qualified. I can take a fishing vessel of up to 80 feet anywhere in the world. I can skipper it. That's my license. I'm supposed to be able to navigate with the stars. I can't even remember how to do it. And I can go second in command anywhere in the world. So I can fish up in British waters up to 80 feet. I think I can go command anywhere in the world. You wouldn't want me to do that now. I'm far too soft. I wouldn't know what to do, and I'm terrified now that I would be seasick. So I make a terrible fisherman. I've been ashore for far too long. But for me to become the person I wanted to be, I had to come ashore and decide to make changes to my life. I had to accept changes, I had to learn new skills, accept change, and I had to grow as a person, because as a fisherman, I couldn't get to where I wanted to be. I was very blessed. I came ashore, moved to the Falkirk area, met Susan's dad in business, met Susan, got married, had kids, and now down here is very much home, although I still talk about going back home as going back up north. I had a very different vision for my life. And we'll see how David had a vision this morning, how he wanted to lead his kingdom. The last time I spoke, I said that the last words was between David and Saul and the party company. And not long after that, we read that Saul had actually died in battle. And so had Jonathan, his sons, as well. So David was now anointed king over the land, over Israel, and then over Judah, and then Judah and Israel as well, collectively. And that's where he led. And our story gets picked up in 2 Samuel in chapter 8. And this morning, You don't have to turn to it because it's only 2 verses. No 25-verse epic readings or a chapter or nothing like that. It's only 2 verses, so you can listen along, and it simply says this. David reigned over all Israel. And listen to this next line. Doing what was just and right for all his people. Not just 1 or 2. Not the ones he liked, and the ones he did, but the ones he didn't like as well. It said, because there's always someone we don't like, isn't there? We've all got the prickly ones as well. I remember Susan talking about a sermon she heard about loving the ugly ones. And she didn't mean ugly people. She just says, we need to learn to love everybody as a church member. And I remember, I'm diversifying, I said I wouldn't do that this morning, but I remember one day someone came into church, I hadn't seen for a while, I thought, I don't like that person, and I immediately was chastised. God immediately spoke to me and he says, Mike, I love that person just as much as I love you. And I was immediately chastised by that, And we read here that David did what was just and right for all the people. Now, I'm going to read some names here. I have been practicing them, but I'm not very good at them. But so hang on, I'll say them with confidence. But Joab, it says, Joab, son of Zeruiah, was over the army. Josaphat, son of Athlud, was the recorder. Zadok, son of Ahitub, and Emlach, son of Atibar, were the priests. And Syria was the secretary. Benaiah, son of Judea, was over the Kerthites and the Perthites. And David's sons were royal advisors. And the reason I've read that verse here is to see how David had organized everything. It wasn't a case that he was the man. He was the man with people to lead. He had a team helping him lead his kingdom. And it wasn't just people doing the practical tasks. There were people here looking after the people as well. The Kerethites and the Pelethites, they think they were part of the Philistines. That's where they came from. Some say they were runners. But here were people looking after maybe sort of ethnic minorities groups, that they were looked after, they were cared for as well. David paid attention to every single detail. And I love this wee 2 verses that it says that he reigned over all Israel, doing what was just and what was right for all the people. And he speaks about Joab, who is in charge of the army. He talks about Josaphat, who is a recorder. That's the accountant, the person who takes the notes at the minutes. You've all got one of them. I know you had an AGM this week past, and someone have taken minutes of what happened at your AGM. David had all that laid out. Zadok and Amalek, they were over the priests, and Sariah was his secretary. And Benaiah, he was looking after all these ethnic people that lived amongst him as well. And it says his sons were royal advisors. David had a vision for how his kingdom would look. There's a great story I'm reminded of. I'm sure you've probably heard it before. I know you've got some sailors amongst you. I've watched a few podcasts in between my weeks preaching here, and I've enjoyed some of your stories. And I know Robert was sharing about as a sailor. And I'm reminded, if he hasn't already told you that story, it says that there was a battleship captain had been at sea. I think we've got a wee picture here of a battleship captain. And this is what these guys look like. They're big guys, loads of badges and loads of honours behind them, and they're command of some very, very large vessels. And it says he had been at sea on the routine manoeuvres under heavy weathers for days. The captain, who was worried about the deteriorating conditions, stayed on the bridge to keep an eye on all the activities. One night, the lookout on the bridge suddenly shouted, "Captain, a light bearing on the starboard bow." "Is it stationary or moving?" replied the captain. Because if it was stationary, that meant the battleship was on a dangerous collision course. The captain immediately ordered his signalman to the ship. "Signal the ship. We are on a collision course. I advise you to change course 20 degrees east." Back came the response from the other ship. "You change course 20 degrees west." Agitated by the arrogance of the response, the captain and his signalman asked his signalman to shoot out another message. "I am the captain. You change 20 degrees east." Back came the second response. "I am a second-class seaman. You better change course 20 degrees west." And by this time, the captain is absolutely furious, and he shouted to the signalman, "Send back a final message. I am a battleship. Change course 20 degrees east right now." A few seconds later, the response came back. "I am a lighthouse." And it's so true, that we can often live our lives like that, on collision course, and we refuse to move because of our stance. And the lesson this morning is that we need to see further ahead than the stem of the vessel. We need to know where we're going. We know where we are and where we want to be. We want to know where we are as a church and where we want to be as a church. Because once you know where you are and where you want to be, then you can put together a plan and how to get there. But without the A and the B, you can't do that. And the captain failed to look further than the stem of his boat. So you've got to look further down the line. I remember when I was at high school just a few years ago, not that long ago, I remember sitting in my O grades. Some of you will know what O grades are, some of you won't know what O grades are, but I was sitting in my O grades, and of course my heart was just to be a fisherman. You didn't really need any O grades, so I left school fairly quickly. But for some strange reason, we did a careers day after you sat your exams. It'd be far more sensible to do a careers day before your exams, because by that time the horse is bolted, so to speak. And I remember going to the BP stand, and they had a stand there, and I really was attracted to the career of a radio officer aboard what was called a VLCC, which is a very large crude carrier. It's one of these large oil tankers that are about 1,500 feet long. And these boats really fascinated me, and I would have really liked to have done that. And the man said, Michael, you need your O-grade maths. And well, there's a problem. I never took maths. I didn't bother with it, really. I could have taken it, I just didn't do it. And I always tell my girls I'd learned all I needed to know. You know, they've had to go to university. I call it further education. So I decided at 15 I didn't need that. And so I left and went to sea. But I really kind of shot myself in the foot a little bit, because if I'd stuck in and learned, I could have maybe had a change of career aboard one of these boats, these VLCCs, very large crude carriers. But one of the fascinating things about a VLCC is, did you know, to stop that vessel takes 20 minutes. That's not a shout you can shout from the front of the boat. Whoa, stop, 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 because it's going to take 20 minutes. These boats, they had to have a plan. You know, to fail to plan meant they'd end up in the rocks. If they failed to counteract things like the wind and the tide, changing conditions, they would end up in the wrong destination. And churches are like that. You know, leading a church is exactly the same. Leading churches means that you have constantly got to react to the unexpected conditions. That's part of leadership in order to remain on course for your destination. Not only internal challenges as a church, all churches face them, but external challenges as well. Things like trends, styles, culture, demographic, all need to be taken into account when leading a church over a generation. And David knew that. No church is exempt from that, and no church is unique. So it's something that all churches have gone through from time to time, and we need to be striving to be the right church at the right time. That has to be the heart of church service, whether you're a member or whether you're in leadership. We often remember the good old days with a smile, don't we? You ever look back and think the good old days? Some of you? Yeah? I look back at my days as a fisherman, you know, with great fondness, actually. But I know that my brain has chosen to forget the other times that I didn't quite like, the hours of standing on the deck in the North Sea with the wind and the waves howling down at you. You know, I remember one day working for 3 days straight with no sleep. You know, only being able off the deck for a few short minutes to grab a quick sandwich. You know, I've seen grown men cry. I've lost friends at sea. And we lose these horrible thoughts and memories. But our minds tend to look back in the good old days just with good thoughts. Is that right? Yes? Yes? Hey, come on, guys. Play along. We all do it. We all know we do it. But if I take you back to some of the old days here, here's some of the good old days behind us. Let's see this slide here. Who remembers, you know, guys going about like this here? You know? Now, I know it's maybe some of you ladies, or maybe some of you men think, I remember these days. Fine-looking men they were in these days. But if I was to turn up in Kilsyth Church looking a bit like this here, I might get some funny kind of looks. They might think, who's this strange dude speaking from the front? You know, and you might not take me too serious compared to sort of the modern day speakers and ministers. You know, trends change over the years. And it's not only the men that change, of course, the women change as well. We see this next slide. There you go, the perfect housewife. You know, which one is it? I'm not going to tell you. You can decide yourself. But I remember when we came the first time to the charismatic churches about 10 years ago now, I had a big challenge with women speaking at church, and we read and studied a series by a chap called Alan Hewitt. And if you come to me with a Bible, an argument of change in the church, you've got to bring the Bible first to me, because I won't listen until you start from there. And Alan Hewitt, he just took apart my arguments from a biblical perspective and also a cultural perspective and put them all together and changed how I felt and how we stood. And it was a great blessing to the family, because it released not only Susan but the girls into minister as well, because I realize now that one of Satan's biggest victories is silencing women in the church. We have such great talented women in the church. But one of the funny things was it showed you an advertisement for the 60s and a handbook for the housewife. And I read the handbook. Now, I'm going to confess, I did like it. But Susan wouldn't sign up. But it was about how this housewife, she's cleaning our carpet. She's hoovering our carpets there just now. And she's beautifully dressed. She has her shoes on. You'll notice her hair is done. Our lipstick's on. What's happening here is our husband is going home from work. And this is what this handbook, is that right, Susan? This is what the handbook said. It said, you got to brush your hair and put your lipstick on. Get the house hoovered. Tidy the children. And get your husband's slippers out for him coming home from his work. Any husbands with me for that? I was like, a few, I love it. It was amazing. But the reality is if you live like that, we're not going to have a marriage. Maybe married, but you won't be living in the same house, And the modern day housewife, modern day mum is very different to what it was like a few years ago. Trends change. What about our families? They change as well. You'll see that the modern day family in this next picture is very different from the family how it used to be. Who can remember sitting with their dad and your dad's knee, maybe your dad reading the paper or telling you stories, or maybe the same. That was he maybe was smoking a pipe. That wouldn't be good nowadays. Things have changed. But now look at the dinner table. That's not our dinner table, by the way. Mike, I'm very anti-phone at the dinner table, and definitely not definitely anti-laptop. But that very much, isn't it? It can be like this. When you get out for dinner with your family and the kids are sitting on the phones. Is that what happens with you guys? And they're sitting and they're scrolling. You're like, put the phone down. That is an important text. It's important. What's important? Well, there's a dog. Apparently my girls nowadays, they have a private chat. I'm not included in this private chat. But it shows dog videos. Like, really, who has time to watch funny dog videos? But they do, and they chat each other, and they sit and they giggle in a little huddle in the sitting room. And what are you laughing at? Oh, it's just a dog video. And this is what happens is things have changed. Cars have changed. How we travel has changed. I'm sure most of you this morning can look back with great fond memories or characteristics, and I see a few saying I had a car like that. But let me tell you, you wouldn't really want to be going about in that kind of car today. When we know we've got this kind of car available, would you? You wouldn't by choice driving that kind of car. It's changed because things have moved on. You rarely see a car broken down nowadays. We were talking about the other day, cars still break down, but often if someone buys a new car, it's very rare for cars to break down. Whereas I remember in the olden days, I actually do remember my dad had a Wolseley. Was it a Wolseley? I'm digressing here. And he actually turned it. I remember that. I can just remember it with great fondness. I remember sitting in the front seat of it makes me sound really old. I've dressed young and everything today, right? But I remember sitting in the front of my car. It was one long seat. You remember that? And I was sitting in the middle, no seat belts, one plastic seat. And when your dad cornered, you used to go jumping about the one side and jumping about the other. It was crazy. And I remember, again, I digress, when I was 17, my friend, I had a Ford Fiesta XR2, and so did my friend. But his car broke down, and he borrowed his dad's, I think it was a Hellman Imp sort of thing. No seatbelts, vinyl seats, and the two of us went to Fraserburgh one night down to see girlfriends and all that sort of stuff as young guys do. And David, of course, driving faster than his dad would have driven it, round the corner, and because there's no seatbelt or nothing to hold on to, round corners, I'm plastered against the side window. There was nothing to stop me from sliding back and forth. Cars have changed, thankfully. Shopping has changed. We heard this week of another chain having to close its doors called Beals. Admittedly, we'd never heard of Beals, but down south it's another department store like your Debenhams, etc. How it's closed their door because shopping habits have changed, styles have changed. And the matter of the truth, the hard fact is that if you don't keep up with the modern trends, you'll close your doors. That's a hard truth. You have to adjust, you have to adapt, you have to grow, or it doesn't work. And our churches have changed as well. In this next picture here, you'll see how churches has changed over the years. I don't really know who is speaking up here. I keep going this way because my slides are different, back to front. I don't know who's speaking. This lady here, she's definitely not very happy with him anyway, And I don't think this dude at the front, he's too happy either, But churches have changed. Life at churches has changed, and we can look back with great fondness at how it used to be, and they were the right churches at the right time. But churches have changed, and we need to become the right church at the right time. It doesn't matter which church you're in or where you're from or where I speak, the message would be the same, to be the right church at the right time. And God will bless it as God blessed David. David was very aware of that because he gathered his people. He was subject to a season of change, and we are subject to seasons of change. The word change can put horrors up some people's spines, and they hate that. I think there's two kinds of people in life. I think there's those that move their furniture around and those that don't. Yeah? Anybody here, I'm a furniture mover. Who's a furniture mover? Anybody? One or two? Yeah? Like to move your, no, one or two? Who likes to just keep the furniture the way they are? There isn't, yeah, my wife. There is nothing wrong with the seat. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with the seats right there. You know, sometimes Susan will come home and she'll come into the sitting room and, the sofa's no longer there, it's now over there. What's happened? And well, I just fancy a change. I like to change things. I think it freshens things. It keeps things going, and I'm always looking, can we change stuff? Can we make it different? I'm a change. I like things to change. I'm not fussed to going back the way it was as well. It'll change back after a while. I'll move it back and it goes back to harmony in the house again. But I like to move furniture around. I'm always thinking, we have a great debate just now in our bedroom. I want to do up our bedroom and move our bed. And she doesn't want to move her bed. But it'll be so much, you just don't see it. You don't see it, and I'm not winning the argument there. She says, well, you can move the bed if you like, but that'll be your bedroom and I'll have my one in the other bedroom. So, okay, I'm going to give up on that one. But it's not really change. It's just growing. It's just evolving. That's all it is. It's just churches moving forward. And we'll see that through David's leadership this morning. It's essential for the life and for the growth of a church. It's broke my heart. I've seen churches have had to close their door. I've spoken to churches where their doors are now closed because they wouldn't grow or move with life and trends and stuff. And it's so sad because in their time, they were great churches. And they did a great job in their time as well. I don't like when people criticize churches from the front, because I think it's often, sometimes you look at church just now and say, oh, it's such a shame. But actually, that church did so much good in its time, so much blessings in its time. I've been to churches where, made me the person I am. The Bible teachings were good and vibrant and gave us foundations and growth. They were the right churches in the right time. And we want to be the right church at the right time. But sometimes we are held back by our best intentions. We don't even see it happening. Or we allow things to stop us. Silly things like, for example, tradition is a great one. That's one of the big stumbling blocks for churches to grow and move, is tradition. They'll say phrases like, well, it's always been done like this. And I think, okay. I want to tell a little story about the way things are always been done. There was a father, and he used to cook for his family every Sunday, a roast beef. And his roast beef was famed in his family. His family all talk about it. No one would ever miss his roast beef. And he served it up. They always loved Dad's roast beef. And it was served in a particular way, with the ends cut off the beef. That's how it was done, how it's cooked, that's how it's presented. And eventually, as the girls grew up, they said, Dad, how do you cook your roast beef? Because when we get married, we want to cook roast beef just exactly the same as you. And how do you do that? Why do you cut the ends of the beef? Does that make a difference to the flavour? And he said, I don't really know. It's just the way it was always done. My mum used to do it like that. So one day they were visiting the granny, and they says to Granny, Dad cooks roast beef and it's great, and he says he learned it from you, and he puts his beef, he cuts his ends of his beef off, and he puts it in the oven, and he serves it, and it's so juicy and flavoursome. Why? Can you tell us, why does he serve his beef like that? What difference does the beef make if he cut the ends of the beef off? And the granny laughed, and she says, none at all. She says, I cut the ends of the beef off because our oven was too small. And here's the father, another generation down the line, still cutting the ends of beef off and putting it into his big new oven and thinking that's the way it was always done. When the truth of the matter was, that actually her oven was just too wee. And it's a funny story, but I actually spoke one time to a pastor of a church the time of the church started, for example, and I'm being careful what I say because these things can go out in podcasting, he said the church started at 25-2. That's an unusual time for a church to start. Why did you start the church at 25-2? Well, that's when the bus used to stop outside the church. And I thought about that. And the church had been going for maybe something like 60 or 70 years, 80 years old. So they're still starting the church at the same time, 25-2, because that's when the bus used to stop outside the door. Things have moved on. Things have changed. When you look, is it the right time for families? Is it the right time for the older folks? Is it the right time for teenagers? Things change, and there's just small details, but they make such an important. And David was no stranger to small detail, because it says he looked after all his people. Ego is another one. Losing control of power or fear of handing that role on. And sometimes we've all got a bit of ego in us. Susan says men and their egos. We all carry that little bit of ego. And I remember personally, I was challenged last year at the end of last year to give up my men's ministry. And I was like, I really felt God was challenging me to give up the badge. And I was like, but God, it's a strong ministry. It's grown from 12 guys who are like in their 70s and 80s playing dominoes to 40 guys. We've got guys who are in their 20s, guys who are 70s, guys in their 80s. It's strong, it's monthly. We've got big numbers going to conferences. Why stop changing? And I felt challenged and being questioned, is it about the badge? And last year I said, no, I'm going to give it another year. And I did it another year, but the full year, this 2019, it just never left that. Is this about the badge? Is it about the badge? Are you prepared to humble yourself? And I really felt challenged. And against, despite maybe what would seem, to be convention, I had to say, you know what, I need to step back for it. Because I felt God was saying, you need to step back for that. And I don't know why God wanted me to do that, and I was worried I would become insignificant or the role. And I said, actually, within 15 minutes of praying, God, I don't want to be insignificant. I got a phone call to come in and speak here for a month. I don't think I could have done that had I kept on that. That call would have never came had I not given up that badge. But sometimes we've got to ask ourselves, is it my ego? Am I not willing to move because it's my ego at stake? Or another one is turning a blind eye when, it's okay. Things are fine. Ignoring the obvious. If you're trying something, for example, and it's not working, don't be scared to stop and change and go and try something else. It maybe just hasn't quite clicked, hasn't quite worked. But sometimes we turn a blind eye to things, don't we? We try something new and numbers decline. But we need to keep doing it this way. But there's not people coming through your doors. Well, numbers are not important. Well, there's a whole book called Numbers in the Bible. Numbers are important. It is important. Another one, fear of new people. Being in our comfort zone. Susan reminds me of a person she once knew, or maybe it was her dad, and they used to say, who wants more Christians through the door? They just bring more problems. Well, they do, don't they? But we're called to help them with that problems. Or who wants it just brings a modern challenge. Who wants new people? We're happy here. It's a nice group. We've got great atmosphere. We're great friends and new people, because it just brings problems. And the last one I've got here is lack of vision. And that's a killer. And again, I see it in churches where churches all of a sudden become managed. They're not led. And there's a difference between a church that's managed and a church that's led. A huge difference. Proverbs 29:18 says this: without vision, the people perish. Vision is so important. It's a lifeblood which will take your church from here to where you want it to be. By grace and his personal experience, because David had a lot of roller coasters. If you take your time and read through his story, David had a lot of experience. But David learned to have no issue with these sort of things. And he appointed trusted leaders to lead and to serve with him. He had great plans. David had great plans to build a temple. He was going to build this phenomenal temple for God. He was going to be the man, and God said, it won't be you. It won't be you. It's going to be your son. But it's not going to be you. And if you read it through 1 Chronicles, which we're not going to do today, but you can do it in your son, and it breaks down the leadership structure in more depth there. In verse 17, it says, David commands all his leaders. He gathered his leaders round about him, and he took his Solomon, and he says these words: I need you to help the young Solomon. Here's Solomon. Here's a young guy. I need you to help him. I think it wouldn't mean that different from this. Scott, come here. Bob, what about you come? And me saying to Bob, as a leader of the church, Bob, this is a guy. Face them, not me. I see you. This is a guy. This is a guy who's going to lead you into the next generation. This guy's going to build your temple. And you may be thinking, what, that skinny guy? That skinny dude? He's going to build it? Then what else is you doing? I'm trying to get like you. You inspire me when I came here for a start, but, this is a guy who's going to build a temple. But he turns to Bob and he says, look, you need to help him. You need to guide him. You need to do that. You need to be there for him. Yep. That's what David worked across the generations. Do you see that? That's what he did. Thanks, guys. Give him a wee round of applause. Thanks you. That's what he did. David commanded leader to help. And then in Chronicles 28:11, I have this beautiful picture in my head. And it says where David hands over his plans and his sketches to Solomon. I think David had a room in his palace. And as I'm digressing here, and I'm kind of painting this picture. Ever seen a guys who build model railways? Is there any model railway builders in Kilsyth? There's a few of them, yeah? I bet it's in a private room, yeah? Kids don't get in there without Granda being there. It's not going to happen. There's nobody going to visit. No wives allowed. That's extremist stuff here. You know, no one gets in that room to see that moral railway. And I think David would have had the same. He had his temple belt with matchsticks and stuff. And I think he takes Solomon's hand on his shoulder and he says, David had many sons. And I think he puts his hand on Solomon's shoulder and he says, come on, son, I'm going to take you into the room. And Solomon would have been buzzing. And nobody gets into the room. This is amazing. And he goes into this room. And David puts on the lights. I know there's no electric in that day, but bear with me. Switches on his lights. Flicks on the wee switch below the train set. And lights up the temple. And he sees the trees. And he sees how the temple is beautiful. He sees the courtyards. He sees the places of sacrifice. And he sees the altar. And he sees all these different prayer rooms. And he shows Solomon, the picture that he has. I think it's this beautiful image in my mind of our Father handing on what his vision was to the next generation. David was no stranger to these kind of things. John Maxwell writes this. He says, leaders see beyond others. In other words, they see beyond their generation. They're not building a generation for just... the storehouse is not for this generation. You're building this storehouse right now for the next generation. Leaders see before others. In other words, they see what happens before others see it. Because they see what happened, often where we're going is going to lead here. They see further down the line. And leaders see bigger than others. Leaders have a bigger vision. You have a great facility here. You know, when we first came here, I came here, I had my sneaky visit in December and stayed at the back and undercover and all that, but just to see you all and be a bit more familiar. And I got a tour, and I was blown away with what you have here. And Susan, when she came the first week, and the girls, they got a tour around the sides and the backs and the rooms, and you have got a great facility here. It was designed with vision. This building was built with foresight, and also in the belief in the faith of a great future, wasn't it? Thought went into the design and the layout, went into the lighting and the sound, the coffee facilities, the catering facilities, all designed thoughtfully and prayerfully. And I'm sure you guys are thinking it was involved in it. Well, we didn't get it right. We should have done this different, or we should have done that. Of course, that's just human nature, you know. But thought is going into this. But I want to tell you this morning, this is just a building. Without you, this is just a building. You make a church. Your smiles, your welcome, your praise, that's what makes the storehouse what it is today, not the building. This is a vision, but it's you that makes it. Solomon wanted to build a great temple, but he was just the man. Solomon was going to lead into the next generation. You is what makes the church what it is. And every member has a part to play. It's not just the leaders. We've got to get behind the leadership. We've got to get behind them and support them, not criticize and tear down. We have a role to play as church members. We need to follow David's example. We need to lead prayerfully. One of the things we did in a men's ministry, one of the best things over the years, we evolved over the years, we grew. It didn't just happen overnight, and we had to grow and evolve and learn. And one of the things we did maybe 3 years back was I decided that before every men's ministry night, we'd have a 30-minute prayer meeting for the guys. Thinking maybe 3 or 4 would turn up. We would have 15 and 20 guys coming to pray together in a circle, pray for each other and pray for our wives, for our families, pray about our jobs, you know, and then pray into the evening. And then we'd stop 5 minutes before 7:30 when we'd open our doors for everybody else to come in. You know, and it was a great blessing. I believe it's always been, we've always done that. And anything we've led, and Susan and I have led in children's ministries and children's outreaches, and we've been involved in youth work, and we've always believed that it should be prayerfully led. David put God first in his plans, and when God spoke, David listened. He wanted to build a temple, but God said, no, it's not going to be you, it's going to be somebody else. We need to be prayerfully led, and we need to lead respectfully across the multi-generations. You know, we saw that when David commanded his leaders to help young Solomon. It's easy to change things fast, but we need to be respectful for those that have gone before, the older generation. When we did Fearless, I had 12 great characters. I went to a prayer meeting. I thought it was a prayer meeting, actually. I went to my Bible study and being a good brethren boy as a background. I went to my Bible and I sat down and they're playing dominoes. And I said, what's going on here? And he said, well, it's a youth club for the old guys. Okay, all right. And I says to Susan, phoned a toilet break. I think I made a mistake, but I can't go home. I need to stick it out. But what a night I had. I got to know guys I'd never known before, because, Sunday's busy with kids and children, etc. But their stories, and I learned so much from these guys. It was amazing. One guy in particular, I believe you might even know him, because I spotted him on one of your old church Facebook pages, called Willie McAllister. And I don't know if you don't know William Fiona, but I think you used to go when you met in a high school. And I don't know if you know him good or bad either, so don't shoot me on that. But Willie, for the character he was a character. He had this lovely smile. And when we started to grow the thing, we created we played pool and stuff like that in our men's night. And Willie was the first. If a new guy came, Willie would always say, "Hey, come and have a game of pool." He was inclusive. And when, unfortunately, a few years ago, we lost Willie. He passed away, and I spoke at his funeral, just a very short, brief message. And I spoke about how the guys need to learn for the smile of Willie McAllister, to be welcoming, to embrace folk when they come in through the door. Willie was, I learned for the older generation. And when we moved things, we had to create a ministry which was appealing to the younger folk, dynamic and energetic for the younger folk, but at the same time create a space where the older guys were happy to come and support it as well. And that spoke a lot about their hearts. They wanted to see it grow. So they had to have a softening of their heart, but a place where they felt it. Does that make sense what I'm trying to say? It was a two-way thing, and it was a great success. And lastly, it needs to be led collectively. In other words, it's a shared vision. David in chapter 28 gathers everybody. He says he gathers his leaders, his officers, his captains, his stewards, his officials, and then he says he gathered his valiant men and his mighty men of valor. Now, if you know the story of David, these mighty men of valor and these valiant men, they've been with David a long time. These guys weren't young pups anymore. These guys were old, battle-worn men with phenomenal stories went behind them. But he said David gathered them all together, and the vision was shared, and they're working towards a common goal. Mark 3 and 5 says this: "A house divided against itself cannot stand." We have to be all in. Not one or two, all in. Your leadership can say, "This is what we want for the church." But you've got to be all in for this to work. Striving together. There's three things I want to leave with you just as we draw this to a close. Three things that are to work on and are so important to the heart of God, I believe. And the first is this: we need to create a welcoming environment. We need to create a safe environment. And we need to create a worship environment. It's so important in churches. David knew how important that was. We need to create a welcoming environment for teenagers, for families, and for the grandparents. It's so important. It doesn't matter whether you're a single or you're a couple, or whether you're a widowed or a widower, whether you're in your teens, at university or college. That you have to feel welcome when you come into a church. We need to work at that. We need to feel welcome families when they come into church. I think that's so important that we create family spaces that will allow children to be children, and we don't hush them too fast. But we create an environment for the children as well. I'm often aware of sometimes that in churches, a family, I remember coming to a church one time as a family of 4 to visit a church to see where we were searching our hearts. Is it time for us to move? And we visited a church and we couldn't find a seat apart from the second front row. And as a new family, it was you're dying a death to come to the front and find 4 empty chairs together. So we need to be aware of that. What if a new family was to come in to church halfway through the worship? Where would we seat them? Where can we look after them so they wouldn't feel awkward, but they'd feel welcome? Just little things like that we need to become aware of. Being aware of the older folks, that there's access and wheelchair access and places that they can sit, that they feel welcome, that they feel appreciated within our churches. We need to create a safe environment for the broken, for the hurt, for the abused, and for the hungry. So they can come and feel not judged, but feel helped, supported, loved, and blessed. Isn't that what the message of Jesus was about? Yeah? He came to work, to save the broken, the hurt, the abused, and the hungry, and the hungry. Hey, at one time we were broken, hurt, abused, hungry, and angry. So our environment needs to be safe for them. I'm just going to ask the worship team to come up now as we draw this to a close. And finally, and very appropriately, we need to be an environment of worship. Worship breaks down barriers. It's great to come into a church where the music is already playing in the auditorium before the church starts, because, if it's silence, it's awkward. But when you come into an environment where there's music playing, in the background. You know, if someone comes in and is having a bad week and they sit down in the quietness of their mind, they're sitting waiting for the service to start, the music is already starting to break down that barrier. It's so important that we have a culture of worship in our churches. Our songs need to be relevant and they need to be loud. My father-in-law doesn't like them too loud. But when we phone him, his first word is, wait a minute, I'll turn down my stereo. So he does like the loud music. It just has to be Johnny Cash or somebody else for another generation, you know. But our music has to go to be loud and it's got to be relevant. I love it when I hear my girls, you know, playing music at the here at church, where they play it at home through the week. That's what we want in our environments. But it has to be respectful as well. So we have to find that balance, that mix. And the last point in this is our talk needs to be edifying and glorifying. And I'm just going to ask Bob to just play a wee bit quietly in the background there a wee minute. I'm going to read a verse as we draw us to a final conclusion. You know, our talk is to be edifying and glorifying. We don't want to be gathering in the negative huddles at the back of our room where the negativity starts, or we're not talking up. We need to talk up church, talk up God, what God's happening in our life, talk up each other. We want to create a worship environment. That's what we should be striving for churches. Welcoming environments, safe environments, and an environment of worship this morning. Our story comes to an end with these beautiful words from King David. And I want to kind of almost leave them with you this morning. It says, as for you, my son, know the God of your father. Serve him with a loyal heart and a willing mind. What better way could David go out by saying that? And I want to give you that verse this morning in the storehouse. And it's, as for you, know the God of your father. That's powerful. Serve him with a loyal heart and a willing mind. Through David's example, over the last 4 weeks, we've seen a young boy willing to offer up his gift and his talents. We learned about a man who with grace, handled life's ups and downs. And finally, a leader who showed forgiveness when vengeance would have been far easier. And then a king who had a vision for a future. And it said, David died at a good old age, having enjoyed long life, wealth, and honor. David's path wasn't always smooth. David made some mistakes, some big, big mistakes. But God didn't hold that against him. How do I know that? Because it tells us. He died at a good old age, having enjoyed a long life with wealth and honor. Let's just stand and we're going to close in prayer, and I'm going to hand on to the band. And I pray that this has been a blessing to you over the month of January. It's been a blessing to myself. I pray that what we've listened to and what we've learned will be taken in the way it's been meant to give. I hope I've shared what God has put in my heart as best I possibly can. I've shared it. And I pray it'll be a blessing for you as you go into your future. Let's just pray as we commend it to the Lord. Father, I give you thanks for the storehouse. I thank you for their warm welcome that they've given us, our family. Father, I pray you'll be a blessing to them. Father, I want you to strengthen them and encourage them. I thank you for every single person that's came and stepped into the gaps, Father. That's the word I feel this morning, is stepping into the gaps, Father. I read, Father, this week about Job and how he claimed that often, the tree can get worn and wither, but the roots are strong, and all it needs is some water, and that tree will grow again, Father. And I pray, Father, that the roots are strong here, Father, that you will water them, that they will grow, Father, into a mighty tree here in Kilsyth, a mighty oak, Father. I pray that words over this church. I pray that you will be a blessing to them. Bless them, Father. Strengthen them, Father. Encourage them, Father. I know that there's gaps that are being plugged, and people are picking up the slack, and they're stepping into holes, and are being here week in, week out, Father, where maybe normally they would get a break, or they would get be relieved, or get a week off, but Father, they're stepping in. And I pray you'll just bless them, Father, that you'll strengthen them as a family, Father, strengthen them as a church and individuals, Father. And we give it over to you in your Savior's name. Amen. Oh, you guys.